simply log into the website gotowebinar.com. Then you're going to click the More button highlighted here to the right of your webinar, then notice the Start button to begin your event. Your webinar will start in the pre-broadcast sub-conference with staff. If attendees join early, they're not going to be able to hear you. Once you start the pre-broadcast, the control panel is going to launch onto your desktop. Your staff join the sub-conference with you. Avoid clicking Start Broadcast for now. Attendees who arrive early, they're going to join muted, and they're going to be put on hold. They cannot hear you while you're in the pre-broadcast. Audio is limited to you and your staff. The attendee viewer windows will display the waiting room until you do choose to begin sharing your desktop.
All right, now's a really good time for us to revisit those webinar roles. As the organizer, it's up to you to start the webinar in pre-broadcast and the live broadcast. The organizer is also the default presenter, meaning the one with the screen sharing controls. As the organizer, it's up to you to manage the in-session controls and features. And remember, you can always have a co-organizer to help you with all that responsibility. Your panelists are your guest speakers. They're part of your staff. They can chat with other staff, and they can share their webcams. But panelists cannot see the Q&A section, nor can they help you manage and control the event overall. They can't launch polls, they can't record, they can't accidentally end the session. This is because their focus is to present the material while the organizer and co-organizer manage the event. Your attendees, they can join from their computer or from the GOTO Webinar mobile app. Attendees always join muted by default, so they heavily rely on that questions tool to submit questions to you throughout the event. As your staff arrive, you'll see them listed here in the staff section. You can manage them from here as well. So Dwight has come in on computer audio, which is represented by a microphone. Angela here has chosen telephone as her preference, but that icon is currently gray. So Angela either hasn't dialed in yet or failed to enter that all-important audio pin. So to manage Angela, you just right-click on her name, and this menu of options will appear. Now you can opt to send the audio pin to her, and she'll receive a private chat bubble with instructions to enter that audio pin on her telephone keypad. Once she has entered the PIN number, that phone now lights up green. She's now successfully connected to audio. When an attendee mutes themselves, that puts a gray slash through the icon, indicating they've self-muted. When you've muted an individual, it's more of a red-orange slash. And that's important in GOTO Webinar because the one that muted has to be the one to unmute. Okay. This icon here represents who currently has the screen sharing controls. Remember, when you right-click on someone's name, this menu of options appears. There's a lot of good stuff in here. You could make someone else the presenter so they can share their screen with you. You could also elevate a participant's role. For example, if somehow a staff member came in as an attendee, you can elevate them from an attendee to a panelist. You can always upgrade a panelist to an organizer as well to help you out. Just know that once you've elevated their rights, you can't downgrade them again in that same session. You can grant keyboard and mouse control for shared control of your presentation, drawing tools such as I'm doing now. You even have a dismiss option, which is just like a security guard that's kicking them out the back door. All right. Finally, your mute all button. This usually applies to your staff because remember, your attendees came in muted by default. So the mute all takes everybody in the webinar and mutes them in one click. The only person it's not going to mute is you, the primary organizer. So to mute and unmute yourself, you can just click on your icon in your little grab tab here. Now we're going to talk about your pre-broadcast. This upcoming section provides your key preparation and management steps required in that 30 minutes before your webinar's scheduled start time. Next, we're going to run through a production checklist together. Most importantly, you want to confirm that your panelists and guest speakers have received their invites, all of those staff members. Start the webinar at least 30 minutes early and have your staff join early as well. This gives all of you time to check your audio and make sure everyone knows their role. Close any programs you're not going to use during the webinar, especially instant messaging and email applications, to avoid any notifications showing up while you're presenting. And finally, provide a greeting and an agenda when you kick off your event, very similar to what we did at the start of today's training. By starting your session early, you have plenty of time to review your settings. You can adjust your attendee options. For example, if you didn't want your attendees seeing who else is in the webinar, you can hide the attendee list. You can also choose whether or not attendees can ask questions or raise their hands. The View drop-down allows you to choose what tabs and features are visible in your control panel. So for example, if you weren't going to provide any handouts or launch any polls, you could just remove those from your view so that there's less for you to manage. It's also important for you to know that if you accidentally close a section, clicking on these X's here, you can bring it right back by just going back to the View menu and re-enabling it. Checkmark means it's enabled. Lack of a checkmark means you've hidden it. You can also view your in-session audio options before your attendees arrive using this More menu. If you need to change the available audio options while in session, you can edit the audio mode. You can also disable those on-hold beeps and the entry and exit chimes you hear when someone joins or leaves your event. I highly recommend turning the entry and exit chimes off for those larger events when you know people are coming and going.